Welcome to Reddit Confessions.
Routines are supposed to keep you safe. Mine almost killed me. It started like any other morning, the kind I'd repeated so many times, I could have lived it with my eyes closed. 6:30 alarm. Coffee with 2 sugars. Scroll the headlines in silence before Melissa drifted in, her hair an unbrushed halo, wearing one of those oversized t-shirts that made her look younger, softer. She'd hum something from the radio, kiss my cheek, and we'd drive in together. Traffic reports. Dumb stories from the break room. The kind of life you call quiet happiness if you don't look too closely at it. I thought that quiet was my anchor. I didn't know it was the water filling the boat. The first change was so small it almost slipped past me. A text, late one Thursday. Hey babe, Mark needs me to help finalize the quarterly numbers. Don't wait up. Logical. Melissa was good at her job, scary good. The kind of person who didn't just run meetings, she owned them. Strangers remembered her name. She had that rare charisma that could light a room like a fuse. Me? I preferred invisibility. I fixed problems, kept things running, stayed in the shadows. One late night turned into 2 a week. Then 3. Another text. HR's slammed today. I'll grab dinner on my way home. Reasonable, believable, harmless. But once in a while had turned into a pattern. And patterns are my specialty. The first real red flag came on a Thursday. She'd mentioned a team morale dinner. I believed her, right up until an Uber receipt popped up in our joint email by mistake. Drop-off location, a boutique hotel across town. Upscale, discreet. The kind of place that doesn't care why you're there, as long as you pay. I hovered over the delete button. My thumb froze. I didn't erase it. I saved it. And I told myself I was being paranoid. Because asking meant getting an answer. And I wasn't sure I could live with that answer. March came with rain. And with it, the night I stopped pretending. I came home to a dark house. Melissa had texted an hour earlier. Might be late. Don't wait up. Fine. I ate leftovers, fed the cat, let house reruns drone in the background. Headlights cut across the living room wall. Car door slam. Keys in the lock. Then her voice, low, playful. Yeah, you too. I had a great time. A pause. A laugh. Stop, you're bad. Her footsteps rounded the corner. She was still on the phone when she saw me. And she froze. The brightness in her voice was instant, forced. Hey. She hung up, tossed her coat over a chair, kicked off her heels. Traffic was awful, she said. There had been no traffic. I checked. The perfume hit me before she got close. Heavier than usual, almost cloying. Like it had been reapplied halfway through the night. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Instead, I sat there, watching the way her eyes darted just a little too much, the way her shoulders relaxed only after she left the room. That was the night I stopped being her husband and started being her hunter. The morning I saw the message, I stopped being paranoid. Now I had proof. Saturday. We were in our usual weekend silence. Me on the couch, her in the kitchen topping off her coffee. Her phone lay face up on the table, the steam from her cup drifting past it. It buzzed. The screen lit just long enough for the words to sear into my brain. Can't wait for later. Melissa's name began with an M. But she hadn't sent it to herself. And there was only one other M that mattered. Mark Dawson. Perfect smile. Perfect handshake. That easy, booming laugh that made him sound like he belonged in a commercial. The kind of man who laughed at his own jokes. And somehow made you laugh too, even when you hated him for it. I didn't touch her phone. Didn't even stare at it. Just burned the image into my mind. Every pixel, every font shape, like a crime scene photograph I'd never lose. When she came back into the room, I was scrolling my own phone, my heartbeat steady, but it wasn't calm. It was the steady of a diver sinking into deep water, lungs tightening, ears ringing, vision narrowing. People imagine catching a cheater is a volcanic moment, shouting, throwing things, demanding answers. I'd imagined it that way too. But when it actually happened, I felt nothing but clarity. Cold, sharp, surgical. That afternoon, I told her I had to run into the office for an urgent network issue. I didn't. I drove for hours, pulling into empty parking lots to type notes into my phone. Not about whether she was guilty. That part was settled. These were notes about how to end it. Not with a confrontation. Not yet. Because confrontation warns your opponent. Warning gives them time to hide money. Delete messages. Destroy evidence. No. I wanted her convinced she was untouchable until I'd already cut her knees out from under her. That night, lying beside her in the dark, I imagined her in a hotel bar, leaning in toward Mark with that private smile that used to be mine. I let the anger hit, then forced it down into the file cabinet in my head. Melissa had been married to an IT specialist for over a decade. She'd forgotten what that meant. Monday morning, I started. "I'm updating the router firmware," I told her. She nodded, already halfway out the door for a busy day at work. What I didn't tell her was that I'd swapped our router for a pre-configured model from my office. One with deep packet inspection and device logging sharp enough to track the heartbeat of every piece of tech in the house. For a week, I didn't check it. I let the net hang loose so she wouldn't feel it tightening. When I finally looked, it was all there. On late nights, her phone dropped Wi-Fi the moment she left work. Straight to cellular data. She thought that erased the trail. Cute. In a tragic way, she still used her work laptop at home, a machine set up by someone far less paranoid than me. One Thursday night, she left it open on the bed while she showered. 15 minutes. That was all I needed. USB in. A lightweight monitoring suite disguised as a system update. Keystrokes logged. Screenshots captured. Video calls recorded. Invisible in the task manager. Hidden in plain sight. When she came out smelling of lavender and that same cloying perfume, I was on the couch, scrolling like nothing had happened. 2 weeks later, I opened the folder. Melissa in a silk robe, hair loose, smiling into her webcam. Mark in a hotel room, shirt unbuttoned, a glass in hand. They flirted, laughed in half sentences. Then she untied the robe. I paused, not because I couldn't watch, but because I could. That was the dangerous part. I forced myself through every second, every word, every smirk. Not for closure, for ammunition. By the time I closed the laptop, I had over a dozen recordings. Different hotels, different lingerie. Always him. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It was fact. And fact, in the right hands, isn't just the truth. It's a weapon. 2 words could have ended it right there. I know. If I'd said them, the whole charade would have collapsed in an instant. But I didn't want collapse. Collapse is messy. It leaves survivors. I wanted destruction. And destruction requires patience. That night, I rolled over in bed, facing the wall so she couldn't see my mouth curve into a smile. Let her think she was steering this ship. By morning, I was making my first call. "Emily, it's me." My sister's voice was warm, still edged with sleep. "Hey, Danny. Everything okay? I need you to find me a lawyer." Quietly. The rustle of sheets on her end. "What happened?" "Not over the phone. Just trust me." I always do. When I hung up, the decision felt like steel in my chest. Melissa thought she was playing chess. She didn't realize she wasn't even holding the board. The next morning, I was in Emily's apartment, the one above the bakery that always smelled like cinnamon. She sat at the kitchen table in sweatpants, hair piled in a messy bun, 2 steaming mugs waiting. "What's going on?" she asked. I slid a flash drive across the table. "It's all on there." Her frown deepened. "All of what?" "Melissa and Mark Dawson." She didn't touch the drive right away, just stared at it, then at me. "You're serious?" "Completely. And you haven't said anything to her?" "No, I'm not going to. Not yet." Most people would blow up immediately. I'm not most people. For the next hour, we dissected the battlefield. Emily spoke divorce law like I spoke network security, clean, methodical, ruthless. "If you move first, you control the narrative," she said. "If she thinks she's safe, she'll keep making mistakes. More mistakes mean more leverage. That's the plan. You'll want to start moving money now. Small amounts. Spread it out. Don't spook her." "Already on it." Her smile was small, almost proud. "You've been planning this a while." I didn't tell her the plan had started the moment I saw that can't wait for later. Text. When I got home, Melissa was in the kitchen making pasta, music low. She turned and kissed my cheek like she hadn't been caught on camera with another man. "How was your day?" she asked. "Busy. You?" "Same. Back-to-back meetings." The lie was seamless. I almost admired it. Almost. That night, she worked in the bedroom on her laptop. I stayed in the living room, transferring another small sum into the emergency account she didn't know existed. Less than 1,000. Invisible in the static of married finances. The hardest part wasn't the lying. It was keeping my face still. Every casual smile, every brush of her hand against mine. Theater. Sometimes I'd catch a flicker of the woman I married, and for a split second, warmth would return. Then I'd remember the silk robe, the unbuttoned shirt, and the way she laughed for him. And the warmth turned to ash. A week later, I came home to find her on the couch with a glass of wine. "You're home early," she said. "Traffic was better than usual. Want a glass? I've got work to finish." Upstairs, her work laptop waited. More recordings. More hotel bookings. Receipts for dinners that had nothing to do with business. Even a shared document mapping out a conference weekend that was just a thin disguise for another trip. They weren't even pretending to be careful anymore. Good. Carelessness is the final stage before collapse. And I was almost ready to push. Most amateurs think revenge means going after the person who hurt you. That's only half the job. If you really want to ruin someone, you don't just attack them. You burn down their entire ecosystem. Melissa was one half of the equation. Mark Dawson was the other. Taking him out wouldn't just be satisfying. It would make sure when I finally came for her, there'd be no safety net left to catch her. I knew exactly who to call. Greg Walters. If I texted Greg at 3 in the morning and asked for a shovel, his only question would be shovel or tarp. We'd met in college, bonding over a mutual hatred for a pompous programming professor, and stayed close through every job, breakup, and terrible haircut since. Now he ran a security installation business, alarms, cameras, and occasionally the kind of off-the-books private investigation that never made it onto paper. When I texted him to meet, he didn't ask why, just sent me the name of a bar near the edge of town. Greg was already at a corner booth when I walked in, nursing a beer. "Danny boy," he grinned. "Been too long." "Too long," I agreed. We traded small talk, weather, work, his latest dating disaster, before I leaned forward. "I need a favor." The grin faded into something sharper. "What kind?" "The kind you don't talk about." "Who's the target?" "Mark Dawson, senior sales manager at my firm." Greg's eyebrow ticked up. "What did he do?" "He's sleeping with my wife." I didn't put heat into it. Heat wastes energy. Greg let out a low whistle. "All right. You want me to break his legs or dig up dirt?" "Dirt. The kind you can't wash off." I slid a folder across the table. Mark's LinkedIn, work email, phone number from one of Melissa's receipts, and a list of every city they'd conferenced in together. Greg flipped through, nodding slowly. "Not bad. Give me a week." The week felt like a year. Melissa's pattern didn't change. Late nights, casual mentions of Mark, like she was testing me for a reaction. I gave her nothing. When Greg finally called, his voice had that smug weight he got when he knew he'd found something good. "Meet me at the shop. You're gonna love this." Greg's shop was a converted warehouse that looked like a conspiracy theorist's bunker. Whiteboards covered in diagrams, walls lined with monitors showing live camera feeds. He dropped a manila envelope on the desk. "Your boy Mark is a walking HR nightmare." I opened it. Emails, screenshots, company expense reports loaded with dinners, boutique hotel rooms, and client entertainment. That was anything but. But the real jackpot? Internal chat logs. Mark making crude, explicit comments about female colleagues. The kind that don't just get you fired. The kind that follow you for the rest of your career. "Where'd you get all this?" I asked. Greg smirked. "Let's just say he's not careful where he logs in when he's on the road." "This is good," I said. "It's more than good. Drop this in the right place, and he's toast." "Not yet," I told him. "I want him comfortable first. The fall hurts more that way." Greg leaned back, half grinning. "You're a cold son of a bitch." Cold keeps me from making mistakes. On the drive home, the envelope sat on the passenger seat like a loaded weapon. Up until now, I'd been focusing on Melissa. Now I had a way to burn the man she'd risked everything for, and make sure she got caught in the same fire. And the best part? When I was done, neither of them would even see the other one falling until they hit the ground. Melissa's reputation wasn't just important to her, it was her armor, and I was about to start punching holes in it. She curated herself like a brand. Every photo, every post, every caption carefully balanced between career powerhouse and life of the party. Perfect brunches, sunlit selfies, conference badges, and wine glasses. She wasn't just living a life, she was selling it. And I was going to tank the product. The first seed went in at a backyard barbecue hosted by one of Melissa's old college friends, Tara. It was the kind of sunny Saturday where everyone smelled like sunscreen and grill smoke, drinks sweating in plastic cups. Melissa floated between groups, laughing too loud, leaning in too close. A social butterfly who'd never learned that the wrong flight pattern can lead straight into a web. I stayed near the cooler, within earshot of a cluster of mutual friends. When someone asked how work was going, I sighed, just enough for them to notice. Busy. Melissa's been spending a lot of time with her. Work buddy. I let the pause hang, like I'd just said more than I meant to. Work buddy, one of the women asked, her eyebrows lifting. Oh, just someone she's been collaborating with a lot lately. Mark Dawson. You know how office dynamics get. Said lightly, not bitter, not accusing, the kind of comment people chew on for days. Over the next 2 weeks, I did it again. And again, not often, just enough to keep the air humming. At dinner with another couple. She might as well start paying rent at the office with the way she and Mark are there late every night. When a friend texted about a weekend trip, she'll probably be tied up with her favorite coworker again. Never venom. Always casual. People don't need a full story. They'll write their own, and it's always worse than the truth. The first sign it was working came in a text from Tara. You didn't hear this from me, but someone saw Melissa and that guy at lunch. Didn't look like work talk. I typed back. Not surprised. Thanks for letting me know. I didn't stop with friends. I aimed inside the office too. The right comment in the break room. The right pause in a meeting when her name came up. By the time I got a message from an unknown number, I already knew the ripples were turning into waves. You're not going to like this. Check Facebook. It was a photo album from the regional sales conference in Chicago. Melissa in half the shots. Not with her HR team, with Mark. Drinks in hand. Arm around her waist. Head tilted back in laughter. Her hand on his knee at the hotel bar. Captions were polite. The comments weren't. Looks like you two had fun. Conference vibes. Power couple right here. On their own, each picture was excusable. Together, they were a coffin with her name on it. That night, Melissa came home glowing from yoga. How was it? I asked without looking up. Great, she said, heading for the shower. I nodded, picturing the version of her in those photos, laughing into another man's face while the camera caught it all. The next weekend, I printed the most damning photos on glossy paper, kept the rest in a neat digital file. They'd be ready for the next phase. Because gossip is gasoline. But corporate policy? That's the spark that lights it. And I was about to throw the match. Gossip ruins reputations. Paperwork ruins careers. I'd been letting the rumors do their work, softening the ground, making Melissa and Mark's names feel dirty in people's mouths. But gossip is still a shadow game. Corporate policy, on the other hand, that's a blade you can slide across someone's throat without ever raising your voice. Ours had an entire section on romantic relationships in the workplace. The language was sharp enough to draw blood. If one employee has influence over another's career, the relationship must be disclosed immediately. Failure to do so will result in disciplinary action, up to and including termination. Melissa worked in HR. Mark was a senior manager. Neither had disclosed a thing. I wasn't about to send anything from my work account. That would be sloppy. Instead, I built a throwaway email routed through a VPN that bounced halfway around the world before landing anywhere near my inbox. No metadata. No traceable IP. The email was short, cold, and stripped of emotion. The kind of thing a compliance officer couldn't ignore if they wanted to keep their own job. To whom it may concern, it has come to my attention that 2 employees, Mark Dawson, senior sales manager, and Melissa Harris, HR coordinator, may be engaged in an undisclosed romantic relationship. Attached are photos and receipts from a recent conference in Chicago, which appear to show conduct in violation of company policy. I believe this warrants investigation. Sincerely, a concerned employee. I attached the bar photos, the arm around the waist shot, and a couple of carefully chosen receipts Greg had dug up. Enough to make HR lean forward in their chairs, not enough to tip them off that they were about to step on a landmine. Then I sent it to 3 addresses. HR's general intake, the director of HR, the VP of sales, and I waited. By mid-morning, I felt the air in the office shift. Mark was called into the director's office first. He went in grinning. 20 minutes later, he came out looking like someone had just told him his brakes were gone. Melissa's turn came 15 minutes after that. She passed my cubicle without a glance, her smile gone. An hour later, she was back at her desk, pale and tight-lipped. At lunch, I kept my tone light. Everything okay? Fine, she said too quickly. Just a misunderstanding. Work stuff? Yeah, nothing to worry about. The lie came out like it had splinters. By the end of the day, the buzz had started. That careful, quiet buzz that moves through corporate halls like a draft under a closed door. People glanced at Mark like he was a zoo exhibit. Conversations stopped when Melissa walked in. The dam had its first crack, and I was just getting ready to flood it. Some moves you make in total silence. Others you let them see, just not soon enough to stop it. For weeks, I'd been waiting for the right window. Melissa needed to be gone for hours, fully distracted, fully convinced she was winning. That Thursday, she told me she had an all-day leadership retreat with the HR team. Her laptop folder told me the truth, a client visit with Mark 2 towns over. Perfect. That morning, I kissed her cheek, told her to have a good day, and drove off like I was headed to work. Instead, I looped back, parked 2 streets away, and waited until her car was just a memory in the distance. Then I went home. It's amazing how fast you can pack when you know exactly what you want. My clothes, my electronics, work documents, the leather-bound notebook I'd had since college, the photo album from before the rot set in, my grandfather's watch, everything else, the furniture, the decor, her precious kitchen gadgets, I left untouched. I wanted her to come home to a hollowed-out life. On the kitchen table, I left a single manila envelope. Inside, the divorce papers Emily's lawyer had prepared, already signed. On top of them, a folded bank statement with the emergency account balance blacked out, and a sticky note with 2 words. It's what you think. I locked the door behind me and drove to my new apartment. 1 bedroom, sparse, with a view of a parking lot and a laundromat. Perfectly forgettable. Exactly what I needed. By the time I set my bag down, I felt something I hadn't in months. Quiet. Not peace. Not yet. Just quiet. Melissa called at 5:42 p.m. She'd been home for less than 5 minutes. I answered on the second ring. Dan. Her voice was high, tight. What the hell is this? I think it's pretty clear. You moved out? Without telling me? I told you, I said evenly. It's what you think. A pause. A choked laugh. No, you don't know what you think you know. This isn't. It's not what it looks like. I'm sure it's exactly what it looks like. She started crying. Loud, theatrical sobs with anger buried underneath. We need to talk. Please. I can explain. I don't need an explanation. You can't just. I can't, I said and hung up. That night, I didn't check her texts. Didn't look at her socials. I poured a drink, sat in the stillness of my apartment, and let the silence work for me. Absence can be louder than any accusation. And Melissa had just heard me at full volume. Money doesn't just buy comfort. It buys the illusion that you're safe. I was about to take that illusion away from Melissa. The morning after I moved out, I sat at my new desk with a cooling cup of coffee. Melissa had called twice overnight. I let them ring out. 1 text had landed around midnight. We can work this out. Please. I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into our joint accounts. The balances looked fine at first glance. That was the trick. Nothing abrupt enough to trigger her alarm before the trap was ready. But the real damage had already been done. The last quiet transfers had cleared into my emergency account. Now it was time to close the doors behind me. First, the credit card she'd opened in my name without asking. The fraud report I'd filed weeks ago was already moving, but now I had receipts, literally. Charges from cities she'd lied about visiting. Hotel bills that lined up with Mark's business trips. Restaurant tabs for 2. I called the bank, walked the rep through every detail. Her voice sharpened with each match between my story and the receipts. We'll be suspending the account pending investigation. No new charges will be approved. Perfect, I said. Next, I froze our joint credit line. Not closed, frozen. It's the financial equivalent of changing the locks while someone's still inside. If she tried to use it, she'd get a polite message telling her to call the bank. Then I changed the online banking password and the recovery email. She still had her personal account. But if she'd been leaning on our shared funds to fuel those hotel nights, the hit would land hard and fast. By 10 a.m., the first ripple hit. A text from her. Did you change the bank login? I can't get in. I didn't answer. An hour later, my card got declined. What's going on? Still nothing. By noon, she called. Straight to voicemail. Dan, I don't know what you're doing, but you're making a huge mistake. You're ruining both of us. Call me back. The pleading was gone now. This was pure edge. At 3 p.m., There was pounding at my apartment door. I checked the peephole. Melissa. She wasn't crying. She was furious. I opened the door just enough to lean against the frame. What do you want? You froze the accounts, she snapped, stepping forward like she might force her way in. I reported the fraudulent credit card you opened in my name. That's what happened. For half a second, her face went pale before she caught herself. It's not fraud. I just needed it for expenses. Expenses like hotel rooms and dinners with Mark? Her jaw clenched. Love is temporary, I said quietly. Debt is forever. You can keep yours. We stood there in the stale hallway air until she turned and walked away without another word. I shut the door, locked it, and this time, I smiled. Melissa had just lost her first real safety net, and I was still holding the scissors. When a liar asks to meet face to face, they're not looking for the truth. They're looking for a new story to sell you. It had been nearly a week since I'd walked out. 7 days of frozen accounts, unanswered calls, and silence thick enough to choke on. That morning, her text came. We need to talk. Face to face. No games. I stared at it for a long moment before typing back. Tomorrow. 7 p.m. Cafe Milano. Neutral ground. Public enough to keep her civil. Quiet enough to hear every word. She was already there when I arrived. Corner table. Blazer over a blouse. Hair done just enough to say she wanted control back. But her eyes told a different story. Tired, rimmed red. The kind of exhaustion makeup can't hide. Dan, she said as I sat down. Melissa, we ordered coffee we wouldn't drink. For a while, neither of us spoke. She kept fiddling with the silver bracelet I'd bought her 3 anniversaries ago. I wondered if she wore it now for guilt or for show. Finally, I broke the silence. Why? She blinked. Why what? You know what? Her mouth tightened. I told you, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The only thing I don't know is why you did it. She looked away, then back at me. Her eyes were sharp, but there was a wetness there, too. The kind that makes people think they're seeing vulnerability. I was bored, Dan. Okay, bored. The word landed like a slap. Bored, I repeated. Yes. She leaned forward, lowering her voice as if this were some sacred confession. Hear you. Predictable. Safe. I know exactly what you're going to say before you say it. Mark makes me feel alive. Alive. She shrugged, like that explained everything. He notices me. He's not stuck in his head all the time. I laughed. Not loud. Just a short, humorless exhale that made her flinch. You're going to feel a lot more than that, I said. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I stood, dropped a 20 on the table for the untouched coffees, and leaned just close enough for her to hear. You'll find out. I walked out without looking back, but I could feel her eyes on me all the way to the door. The why wasn't a tragic misunderstanding. It wasn't some twist that made me question everything. It was boredom. And boredom was the one thing I could never forgive. She thought that was the end of the conversation. It wasn't even the opening act. Scandals don't start with explosions. They start with whispers. And I've been whispering for weeks. The comments at barbecues. The slip-ups in dinner conversation. The photos planted in just the right inboxes. I'd been nudging the snowpack. Now gravity was about to take over. It began on a Tuesday morning with a text from Tara. Have you seen her Facebook? I hadn't. I'd stopped watching Melissa's carefully curated social feed weeks ago. But I opened it now. Same profile picture. Her smiling on a beach last summer, my arm cropped just out of frame. But her latest post was different. Melissa at a restaurant table, wine glass in hand. Across from her, only partially in frame, was Mark's cuff-linked arm. Caption. Sometimes you just need to laugh with someone who gets you. Red heart. The comments section was a war zone. Gorgeous. Is this who I think it is? Classy Mel. Not cool. Not cool at all. By the end of the day, 3 mutual friends had unfollowed her. One messaged me directly. People are talking. She's not helping herself. I sent back. People usually don't. Then the family blow landed. Her father called Thursday night, his voice tight enough to snap. We're furious with Melissa. We just found out about him. I didn't ask who him was. She tried to tell us it's not serious, but the photos, the rumors, she's embarrassed us. There was a pause, then. If there's anything we can do to help you, you let us know. I thanked him but didn't tell him the truth, that the most helpful thing they could do was nothing. Let the avalanche bury her. By Saturday, Melissa's Instagram was locked down to private. Too late. Screenshots had already been passed around in group chats she wasn't in, the kind of chats that live on forever. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were public conversation. Then Emily sent me the real gem. Screenshots from a thread between Melissa's extended relatives. Aunt Kathy, have you heard what she's been doing? That's not how you treat a marriage. Cousin Jenna. Saw the pics. Total mess. Uncle Rob. She's just like her mother when she was younger. Always chasing something. I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. But I felt the slope under her feet start to give way. And once an avalanche starts, you don't stop it. You just watch it take everything in its path. Corporate punishment doesn't move at the speed of gossip. Gossip is wildfire. Discipline is a glacier, slow, heavy, unstoppable once it starts sliding downhill. I'd already fed HR everything they needed. They'd taken the bait. Now, I just had to watch the ice crush them. Mark went first. Monday morning, his office door stayed closed. No jacket hanging from the back of his chair. No booming laugh spilling into the hallway. By lunch, the rumor had solidified. Mark Dawson's been let go. Something about misuse of company funds. I didn't have to guess what something meant. It was the hotel bills, the boutique dinners, the client entertainment that never had a client present, all neatly packaged in my anonymous email. Melissa lasted 3 more days. I was in the copy room when I saw her walk toward HR. Her pace was quick, her face blank in that way people wear when they're trying to hold their fear inside their cheeks. She was in there for nearly an hour. When she came out, she didn't make eye contact with anyone. She went straight to her desk, sat down, and stared at her monitor like it might hand her a lifeline. By the end of the week, the corporate speak came down. Melissa Harris is on probation pending review. Translation, start packing. I could have let it end there. Could have let her fade quietly, her job stripped away in slow, polite humiliation. But then, Friday afternoon, I got an email from an anonymous address. Subject: you missed something. Body: check the attached, there's more. The PDF was a set of Melissa's company credit card statements. At first, it looked clean enough. Hotels, meals, travel expenses. Then I started cross-referencing the dates with her late nights and conferences. There they were. Hotel stays in the same cities, on the same dates as Mark's expenses. Duplicate client entertainment, charges matching his receipts. High-end boutique purchases that had nothing to do with HR work. Melissa hadn't just been reckless with her personal life. She'd been stealing from the company to fund it. And in corporate America, you can sometimes survive a scandal. But you never survive touching the company's money. She wasn't just circling the drain anymore. She'd already been flushed. Some endings creep toward you for weeks. Others drop without warning. Melissa was about to get both. The anonymous email sat open on my laptop for nearly an hour. Not because I was hesitating. I knew exactly what I was going to do, but because I wanted to savor it. The inevitability. The precision. The quiet, surgical elegance of the kill. The credit card statements told a story in black and white. Hotels in the same cities, on the same nights as Mark. Client entertainment, expenses that matched his, sometimes word for word. Boutique purchases no HR professional could justify. It was financial misconduct, so blatant it felt like she was daring someone to notice. I packaged the files with the care of a bomb maker. No messy accusations. No emotional language. Just numbers and dates that lined up too perfectly to be innocent. The email went to exactly 3 people. Director of HR. CFO. CEO. Subject line: urgent, financial misconduct, Melissa Harris. Body: please review the attached statements. They appear to show misuse of company funds for personal travel and purchases, often coinciding with trips taken by Senior Sales Manager Mark Dawson. Given recent events, I believe this should be addressed immediately. Sincerely, a concerned employee. 1 click. Sent. By Wednesday morning, her desk was empty. No jacket over the chair. No coffee mug. No trace she'd ever worked there. I overheard the whispers in the break room. They walked her out. Probation didn't last long. Company card misuse, she's done. That night, my phone buzzed with a local business news alert. Former sales manager under investigation for misuse of company funds. Mark's name was in the first paragraph. Melissa's wasn't, but anyone in the industry could connect the dots. Mark wasn't just unemployed anymore. He was radioactive. I read the article twice, then set my phone down. This wasn't joy. It was release. They'd turned my trust into a game. I'd finished it on my terms. Or so I thought. Revenge doesn't rewrite the past. It doesn't make you forget the nights staring at the ceiling, seeing their faces in your head. It doesn't bring back the version of you that believed them, but it frees the future. The divorce went through faster than I expected. Emily's lawyer had a mountain of documentation: the videos, the receipts, the hotel bookings, the corporate misconduct. Melissa had no leverage left. Not after HR. Not after the fraud report. Not after the avalanche I'd set loose in every circle she belonged to. We didn't meet to sign. The lawyers handled it like a sterile transaction. In the end, I kept my savings, my investments, the apartment, the emergency account she'd never known about. She got what was legally hers, which wasn't much. The only thing she fought for was the car. I let her have it, still under payments. A perfect parting gift. The judge's stamp came down on a gray afternoon. No champagne, no smiles. Just a closed folder and a walk out of the courthouse into sharp winter air. Shop windows glowed warm behind glass. Couples passed, hands clasped, laughing like the world was simple. For the first time in months, I felt unchained. Greg texted, wanting to grab drinks, to toast the end of an era. Emily offered to make dinner. I told them both I needed the night to myself. Back at my apartment, I cooked something simple, poured a glass of whiskey, and sat in the dark without the TV on. The quiet wasn't lonely. It was mine. Then my phone buzzed. Number unsaved, area code familiar. The message: "You and I aren't done yet. M." It took me a second to realize it wasn't Melissa. This M wasn't hers. It was Mark. I stared at the words. Mark was supposed to be finished, fired, disgraced, under investigation. But the tone in that message wasn't desperation. It was coiled threat, like he still had a card to play. I didn't reply. Not that night. But as I set the phone down, a thought crawled in like a shadow under the door. Maybe the game wasn't over. And the part of me that had learned patience, precision, and how to strike when the time was perfect almost hoped it wasn't. If Mark wanted another round, I'd make sure it was the last one he ever played. Mark's text wasn't a threat. It was a promise. 2 days later, I left work and saw him leaning against my car, hands in his pockets. That salesman's smirk on his face, like we were old friends instead of predators circling each other. "You've been busy," he said as I approached. "Move away from my car." He didn't. "You think you've won, huh? Got me canned, got your wife tossed out, ruined a good thing for both of us. You did that yourself." He chuckled, the kind of chuckle that wants to sound casual, but is really sharpening the edge of a knife. "Maybe. But here's the thing, Dan, guys like you think you're the only ones who can play games. I've got my own pieces on the board." He pulled out his phone, swiped, and held it up for me to see. Photos. Not of him. Not of Melissa. Of me. Leaving a bar late at night. Meeting Greg at his shop. Walking out of Emily's apartment building at odd hours. Each frame to suggest I was the one hiding something. "Funny thing about perspective," Mark said. "These look a lot worse without context. And I've got friends who'd love to see them." I didn't blink. "Blackmail." He smirked. "I prefer leverage." I stepped closer until we were nearly chest to chest. "Mark, if you think those little snapshots are a weapon, you're out of your depth. I live in facts. You live in appearances. And appearances can be dismantled." For a moment, his smile faltered. "Walk away," I told him, "while you still have the choice." I got into my car and pulled out. In the rearview mirror, he was still standing there, watching me go. That night, I opened a new folder on my encrypted drive. Label: Mark, Phase 2. If he wanted a game, I'd give him one. Only this time, I wouldn't just take his job. I'd take everything else. Mark thought he'd scared me. He had no idea I was already building the weapon that would finish him. Blackmail only works if you're afraid of the truth. I wasn't. Mark just hadn't figured that out yet. What he called leverage were photos that could be explained in 10 seconds. Meeting my sister. Meeting Greg. Having a drink alone after work. But the point wasn't what they showed. The point was that Mark thought he had a weapon, and that meant I could use him. First step, let him feel safe. I didn't respond to his text. Didn't acknowledge our parking lot encounter. 2 days later, I sent a short, neutral message. "Let's talk." Neutral ground. We met at a diner on the far edge of town, the kind of place where the coffee is bad, the booths are sticky, and no one remembers your face after you leave. He slid into the booth across from me, smirk in place. "You're smarter than I thought. Most people would have tried to threaten me back by now." "You want to show me the photos again?" I asked. He chuckled. You get the idea. I leaned forward. All right, Mark. Let's pretend I'm worried. What's your price? He didn't hesitate. 30 grand. Cash. In 2 weeks. And I delete everything. It was so absurd I almost laughed. But I didn't. Instead, I said, fine. But you're going to give me the originals first. All of them. Not how this works. It is if you want me to take you seriously. We left it there, him thinking he'd rattled me letting him believe it. Back in my apartment, I opened the Mark, Phase 2 folder and started building. Greg had already handed me a mountain of dirt. Expense fraud. Documented sexual harassment from the chat logs. Unreported cash deals from his side hustles. Now I added a new category. Attempted extortion. A week later, I told Mark to meet me again to pick up the cash. Greg was there before him, seated in a corner booth with a camera rigged to capture every word and angle without being noticed. Mark slid in, smirk intact. Got my money? I set a thick envelope on the table. He opened it. Inside, not cash. Printed copies of his incriminating emails, expense reports, harassment logs, and a high-resolution still of him standing outside my car 2 weeks ago, phone in hand like a threat. This, I said, is me giving you one last chance to disappear quietly. He looked up, and for the first time since I'd known him, the confidence cracked. You think you can? I already have, I cut in. Next time you contact me, next time you even breathe near my name, this packet goes to your former employer, every HR department in the city, and the police. And if you're wondering how much of this is backed up in multiple places, all of it. Mark's jaw worked like he was chewing words he couldn't swallow. Then he shoved the envelope back across the table and stood. He didn't look back as he left. By the end of the month, the noise was gone. Melissa vanished from social media completely. The last trace of her was a tagged photo at some downtown wine bar, laughing too hard at something outside the frame. The comments were polite but hollow, the kind you post when you don't know which side to take. Mark. I didn't see him again. Greg told me his name had been quietly blacklisted in most of the regional sales circles. Word was, a few companies he'd approached had heard things. I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast to victory. I went back to living. Work. Coffee in the morning. Walks at night. My life was smaller now, but it was mine. Then, one rainy Thursday night, I wrote 2 short messages. To Melissa. Some debts get paid in money. Others in kind. Yours is settled. To Mark. I keep my promises. So far, I didn't send them to start another war. I sent them so they'd remember. So that somewhere, in the quiet moments, they'd still feel the weight of me in the background. Revenge doesn't always end with a kill shot. Sometimes, the most satisfying ending is knowing they'll never be sure I'm done. And me? I was. At least until someone else decided to play.